Hi little explorers, it's Alan the Explorer here from Wee Critters, and I hope you're all keeping well. I'm glad to be back for another video, and today I'm going to be introducing you to a couple of my Wee Critters family. When we talk about animals, lots of people think about the bigger stuff, but the world is also full of lots of smaller creeper crawlies, bugs and insects. And one of the ones we're going to introduce you to today is called Speedy, and this is Speedy. Speedy is a type of snail called a giant African land snail. And as you can see, she is a lot bigger than the snails that we will find in our own back gardens or outdoor spaces. These guys come from the rainforest of Africa, and Speedy here is about 7 years old, so she's not fully grown. When she gets fully grown, she can go to about 25 years, and you can see the shell here of an older snail, about 25 years old. You can see they can get a lot bigger than the snails in our back gardens. Now, snails are invertebrates. So what invertebrates are a really cool type of animal. Basically, they don't have any backbones. And these guys are what's called mollusks. The mollusks are an interesting family of invertebrates because it has snails, slugs, and other types of animals with shells on them from the sea as well. Now, these guys here, as I mentioned, come from the rainforest of Africa, and they have lots and lots of plants to eat in the rainforest. Lots of people don't like snails in their own back gardens because they eat your flowering plants and can ruin your gardens. But these guys here, they obviously get a lot bigger, and we would not want them in our back garden. Now, being a snail, some people think that they don't actually have any teeth, but they do. They have more teeth in their mouth than a great white shark. Speedy has her teeth on her tongue. It's a special tongue called a radula, and it's covered in lots of little teeth, a bit like sandpaper. She uses that to lick up the plants, taking little bits of plants at a time. Now, being a snail, Speedy can have up to 1,000 babies, or 1,000 eggs, lay up to 1,000 eggs a year. So you can have lots and lots of little babies every single year. And very quickly, these guys can become pests if they are introduced into the wrong country. Now, being a snail, they don't have any legs. They've got this long, muscular, slimy foot. And as I mentioned, they produce slime to help them move across the ground and help them climb up trees and different things to get to their food. They need to live in wet places or damp places, because if they didn't have that water, they would dry out and not do very well. Now, if we look closely at the front of Speedy's head here, you can see these 4 little sticky out bits here. Some people used to call these antennas, but believe it or not, these are called tentacles. So they've got 4 little tentacles on their face here, 2 small ones down below and 2 large ones on top. And these ones at the top actually have their eyes on the top of their head, so they actually can see, not as well as us, okay, so they can see light and movement, but not very much. And if I was just to gently touch this eye, you can see it can go right back into its head to protect it, make sure it's nice and safe. I always think it'd be really cool if we had eyes and long stalks like that. They can move them in and out, so pretty special. Now, as I mentioned, they come from Africa, but in Africa, lots of people like to go into the rainforest and find these guys because they're a delicacy. They love to eat these guys because they're a really important source of protein. They're so tasty that they've actually been introduced into other countries around the world. And as I mentioned, they can have lots of eggs in a very short time, so very quickly they become a pest. And in some countries, they're now illegal to keep as pets in case they escape into the wild and become a pest and start eating your crops and other animals. Now, as I mentioned, lots of people don't like slugs and snails in their gardens because they eat the plants, but they are really important part of the ecosystem. These guys are important food in our wee country for birds, badgers, hedgehogs, foxes. So if you put down wee pellets and kill the slugs and snails just to protect your plants, you're also harming other animals in the environment as well. Now, if you took a single tree in the rainforest of Africa and counted every type of animal on it, you will find probably hundreds of different types of invertebrates, whether they are snails like Speedy here, beetles, flies, different bugs, spiders, lots of different invertebrates, and they have all of them have a really important part to play in the ecosystem. And now, little explorers, we're going to introduce you to another cool invertebrate. This little guy here is called Irwin, and Irwin is a type of slug. He's actually a type of slug called a pancake slug, and these guys come from Barbados. So they are a really cool species slug called a pancake slug. They're called pancake slugs because they are very flat compared to other slugs, flat like a pancake. Obviously, these guys, being slugs, they belong to the same family as snails, but they do not have this tough shell on their back. Interesting with the snails, they are born and hatch out of their eggs with a little tiny shell, and as they grow, the end bit of their shell is actually the shell they're born with, so they add the extra layers of shell to their outside body, but these guys don't have them. Slugs generally are smaller than the giant snails. They come in lots of different shapes and sizes, and again, just like our snails in our gardens, slugs like to eat our plants, and it's so important, guys, that we don't put slug pellets down or snail pellets down that kill these guys in our gardens, because it can make them very sick. It can kill these guys, and also it can make hedgehogs and birds and other animals that eat them sick as well. So it's so important to remember, even if you don't like these slimy little friends, that you look after them. And you can see just here with Irwin, he has the 4 little tentacles just like Speedy does on the front of his head to see and to sense, to make sure he's going around. And just like snails, he will produce that slime to help him move across my hand there. It helps him move and slide across, and you feel as he goes. Interestingly, with slugs and snails, you don't get boy or girl snails, they're all the same, and they can every single snail and every single slug can have eggs or babies of their own, which is pretty cool. Now, as I mentioned, bugs and insects have a really important part to play in the garden, and without them, we'd be in a lot of trouble. For example, bees are so important in our gardens for pollinating the plants. They come from one flower to the next, putting pollen and making sure that the plants will grow, and that's so important for us for our crops, stuff, food that we grow, our vegetables that we eat as well. So without bees, we'd be in a lot of trouble. Unfortunately, lots of animals like bees and other insects are in trouble because farmers or people in their gardens are using a lot of pesticides, and that makes the bees sick and that will kill them. And with global warming, the world getting warmer, it's also affecting a lot of our insects and our bugs as well. So it's so important, guys, that we remember that we have to make wee differences to change the world, to try and make the world a better place, even for the insects and bugs, because without them, we would be in a lot of trouble. Now, we have a brilliant worksheet if you would like to download it on the website and find out more information about the creepy crawlies that you will find in your garden or outdoor space. Why don't you go on a bug hunt with your family today or over the weekend and find what insects and bugs you can find, whether it's beetles or millipedes, little flies, slugs, woodlice. There's so many different creepy crawlies in our own backyards and spaces, and why not make the most of the nice weather while it's here to try and find them before the winter comes, because in winter lots of our insects and bugs like to hide. We can make our gardens fun places for insects and bugs to live by building bug hotels. So giving places like beetles, insects, snails, places to hibernate safely throughout the winter. We can plant lots of really nice flowers like wildflower meadows to encourage bees and butterflies to come to our gardens, and we can also leave log piles and things like that for the guys like these guys to go under and hide. So it's so important that we make our gardens or outdoor spaces safe and good homes for these invertebrates and bugs and creepy crawlies, to make sure there's plenty of food for our other animals like our blackbirds, robins, hedgehogs and more. So little explorers, we've got another great book for you today. It's called Norman the Slug with the Silly Shell by Sue Hendra. Norman the slug thought snails were great. "Why," said Norman, "look at them, they're amazing." But unfortunately, the snails didn't think Norman was great. Whee! Crash! "Norman, you silly slug," they cried. "You've spoilt our fun. This only works if you've got a shell." Norman felt left out. Sadly, he skulked off into the moonlight. "If only I had a shell of my own," he sighed, looking at his reflection. And that's when he had an idea. "Maybe I could have a shell after all," he thought. But finding a shell was not as easy as it seemed. One was too bouncy, one was too noisy, and one was already taken. Norman needed time to think. Ta-da! A shell! It was perfect. Norman had never been happier. He could join the snails at last. Norman loved being a snail, and the snails loved Norman's silly shell. But the fun didn't last for long. Suddenly there was a loud flapping of wings. "Look out! Bird!" cried the snails in a panic. "Quick, slither for your lives or we'll end up as supper." But the bird was more interested in Norman's silly shell. It looked delicious. Norman was being carried up, up and away, higher and higher into the sky. What could he do? Norman did the only thing a slug could do. He made slime, lots and lots of it. With a slither and a slither, a slip and a slide, Norman was free. But he was falling. Faster, faster, faster until... plonk! "Norman, are you okay?" asked the snails. "Why," said Norman, "that was great. I love flying. If only I had wings." Ta-da! I hope you enjoyed that story, little explorers, about Norman the slug with a silly shell who wanted to be like the snails. It's so important to remember that we can be ourselves and be individuals. It's nice to try things and try to be like others, but it's so important to follow your dreams and be interested in what you're interested in. I always loved animals as a little kid and enjoyed exploring outdoor spaces and finding bugs and insects, and that's what got me so passionate about following my dream and starting wee critters and keeping lots of other exciting animals. So it's so important, little explorers, that you follow your dream as well.